But Obama is being crushed by many people for how just out of touch this comparison is to link George Floyd to all of these young, innocent elementary school children is particularly distasteful. And Buck, it's evidence of what Democrats do. They effectively victim shop. We are dealing right now with an unprecedented level of violence in our cities and in our states and in our communities. And school shootings are a tiny pinprick of the overall murders of children that are occurring every single day all over this country. In fact, the data reflects, I believe it was released in the last day or so, that the number one cause of death for young children is murder by gunshot and or suicide and or accidental discharge, all these different ways. It has now passed, I believe, car accidents to become the number one cause of death for young children in America. And we talk about shootings in this nation very rarely on a day-to-day basis. And I was on Sean Hannity last night, Buck, and Sean Hannity pointed out and started to run through the list of all the victims of violence in this country. And he asked the question, why did Barack Obama and Joe Biden, when they were president and vice president, spend so little time talking about what had become a skyrocketing rate of violence in America when it was happening in inner cities? And the answer, unfortunately, is not just to blame those politicians, but also to talk about the way that the narrative is shaped. All victims of violence are not created equal. The story of who is killed and who kills them often is what creates the dynamic by which the media feeding frenzy arises. Inner city neighborhoods, inner city shootings are mostly ignored unless there is a white police officer involved or unless there is a domestic terrorist, white supremacist involved. For the most part, these shootings are ignored. And I thought that was epitomized in a big way by what Barack Obama tweeted yesterday, Buck. You saw this, I saw this. I'll read you directly from his Twitter, and I'll get your reaction, Buck. As we grieve the children of Uvalde today, we should take time to recognize that 2 years have passed since the murder of George Floyd under the knee of a police officer. His killing stays with us all to this day, especially those who loved him. And then he's got a thread about George Floyd behind it. But Obama is being crushed by many people for how just out of touch this comparison is to link George Floyd to all of these young, innocent elementary school children is particularly distasteful. And Buck, it's evidence of what Democrats do. They effectively victim shop. And when they find a victim that they want to pay a lot of attention to, they shine a bright light on them. But the vast majority of victims out there get no attention. They get no respect. They get no hope for their crimes to be solved.
In the same way that Democrats insist on politics in everything in our society, sports, TV, movies, you name it, everything, corporate America, in the boardroom, politics is infused into everything for them. They want no place where there isn't a political angle, a political struggle that is playing out. Everything is also used by the left as an opportunity for politics. Every chance they get, they will say, you know what, let's use this to our political advantage. Doesn't matter what it is. And we saw this, I think, in this particular tragedy, almost in a way that it was faster to me than I can remember. I mean, I know the Buffalo mass murder also just occurred, but the speed with which the Democrats and, Joe Biden going on TV that night to make very political statements all across the board, they've used this, they've leveraged this to try to push a narrative that will enhance their power. And Clay, I mean, for Obama to take this, to try to tie Uvalde into George Floyd, what is the possible? I mean, let's just look at some facts. We're still as a country trying to process the unimaginable grief of the families who lost children, of the community that has been shattered. We're still trying to deal with little kids being murdered by a lunatic. And Obama wants to bring up now to his, I don't know, 80 million, 100 million Twitter followers, clearly has still an enormous platform. George Floyd. George Floyd was somebody who, yes, law enforcement, it was found in a court, used excessive force against George Floyd. George Floyd held a gun to the belly of a pregnant woman during a home invasion. George Floyd was an adult male who had committed many crimes previously, and law enforcement force against George Floyd has absolutely nothing to do with what we see here in Uvalde. But this is the Democrat mentality on display. And it is, oh, people are emotional and upset right now. Use this for what we want. Use this for what we're trying to achieve. It doesn't matter, honestly, how exploitative and grotesque it is. I mean, Obama's tweet was not only tone deaf, it's moronic, too. Because you look at what happened after, we've talked about this so many times, the legacy of the Democrats and the BLM movement after George Floyd is a few thousand additional murders, disproportionately, by the way, of young black males in America in the last 2 years. That is the legacy of the BLM movement. The legacy of the BLM movement is no member of my own family will even get on a subway in New York City now, because every day we see another video of some complete lunatic punching an old lady in the face, grabbing somebody's bag,
woman by hair,
exposing, their genitalia. I mean, doing crazy stuff. And the Democrats are, we don't want to be, we can't send the police to clean things up. That's going to look bad. It's outrageous what they've done to this country under the banner of social justice, under the banner of undoing racial injustice in the past. They're just destructive.
I think what happened on the tweet was they were all geared up for the 2-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. And then Uvalde happened. And somebody said, well, you shouldn't send this tweet without mentioning Uvalde. It was already written, already drafted by his team. And then they put that out in a totally ham-handed fashion. Buck, on that, I'm glad you brought up the subway, by the way. I'm coming up to New York next month. Right? We're having an event in New York. My wife is coming up to. Usually, I think every other time I've ever been to New York, at some point I've gotten on the subway. Last night I was talking to my wife. I was like, hey, whatever you do not get on the New York City subway. I just based on all of the viral videos that come out, I feel like every day. The one that was going around yesterday, Buck, did you see this? I mean, it was a crazed man attacking 2 women on a subway car. People were filming, not doing anything.
I'm not even sure if we saw the same video, Clay. I'm being because there are so many of these videos. I think that is the video that I saw, but there's other video going around right now of another assault on the subway. And we just had a murder on the subway on Sunday of somebody who is, like I said, this guy is, like the American dream. He's a self-made guy. He's trying, he's a Goldman Sachs employee. He's just trying to go to brunch on Sunday. He's Hispanic, he's got a loving family, and he's murdered by some lunatic who has 19 criminal convictions. What does Obama have to say about that, by the way, Clay? Can I ask, where's Obama on that one?
No, nobody. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. When they victim shop, they don't actually talk about any victims that have anything other to do. Like if there is a death in New York City, I mean, it's the same reason why Joe Biden didn't go to Waukesha, right? Joe Biden can immediately get to Buffalo after the shooting that occurs there. He can immediately, evidently, go down to Texas after the shooting that occurs there. But a black guy drives an SUV through a Christmas parade, kills tons of white people. Joe Biden can't find the time to go there. It's pretty transparent and clear, and it's sad. But identity politics requires Democrats to sell the idea of, hey, white people are uniquely committing crimes. It's white terrorism. It's white supremacy in an effort to try to drive up the black vote. And if a black person commits a crime, Joe Biden didn't travel to New York after the black guy shot up the subway. He's not commenting on the black guy who shot the Hispanic Goldman Sachs employee. He didn't show up in Waukesha after a black guy drives through a Christmas parade and kills a kid and many other people and wounds, I think, over 60 people. He didn't have the time to do that because the person who was committing the crime doesn't fit his narrative. And this is how disgusting things have become, Buck. You know this. Every time there's an act of mass violence, social media rushes to find out who it was. And people are like, I hope it was a white dude. If you are a white supremacist hating left-winger, first thing you thought when you heard there was a school shooting in Texas was, I bet it was a white guy. I hope it was a white guy so I can turn this into a white supremacy issue. That's what social media does. It turns everybody into hunters to try to find whatever they believe evidence for it. And there's always, this is my argument for a long time, Buck, whatever you believe, it's happening somewhere in America today, right? Because we have 330 million of us. Every single day, whatever you believe, there is evidence that it's occurring. And why the media is so fundamentally dishonest very often is they cherry pick stories to spread narratives which don't accurately reflect what's actually taking place in the country on a day-to-day basis. It's infuriating.
Mass shootings, as much as they get a lot of media attention, and obviously in the immediate aftermath of one as heinous as this, it is entirely understandable why there's such a national focus on it. But if you're looking at data and stopping murders,
yes,
mass shootings are less than 1% of homicides nationwide. Nobody will contest that. Nobody will say otherwise because the data is so very, very clear on this. So why are we seeing so much more violence in the last 2 years than we had in previous years? You look at this, and it is the direct result of policy decisions that have been made about how we view and treat our law enforcement, the criminal justice system, most notably prosecutors and, yes, judges. This was pushed by Democrats, by leftists, by cultural Marxists in our society who decided that, criminals were being too rough on them. We're too harsh on criminals, and our system is racist. So we have to change the system dramatically in a way so that it's not racist. You say, well, hold on a second. The system is just meant to protect people from being the victims of crimes and to punish those who commit crimes, irrespective of these social justice considerations that the left tries to make everything about. And we see what the results are. I mean, so for Obama to 2 years into this, with all the data we have, pretend like the BLM movement, which is just a Democrat faction, isn't responsible for more death, more misery, more
thousands
anarchy.
of additional people dead.
I mean, I would love the opportunity. I mean, Barack Obama would never debate me on anything, right? He's too important. But this is a debate that they would get anybody, honestly, at this point, because we have the data now. I mean, we were making the case before. Now it's look at what's happened. And they'll say, oh, it was COVID. No, it's not. Liars. It's not because of COVID. Oh, it's because of what exactly? Oh, guns. There were 400 million guns in American hands 3 years ago, Clay. What changed? This is why, folks, you can't let them get their way on the left, because by the time we all suffer and figure out how wrong they are, they've moved on to something else.